Hello there, it's Harper. Welcome to Pages and Reels. Today I wanted to analyse and let my mind wander about the character of Myrtle Wilson in F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. Sometimes if a minor character from a story is interesting to me, I go off and not only analyse them, but also give them all sorts of backstories. So a word of warning, I may go off on all sorts of tangents in this video. As usual, spoiler alert for the novel. Myrtle Wilson is not meant to be a likeable character. She is coarse, shallow, selfish, and immature. She is a horrible wife to her husband, and this is not just because she is cheating on him. The way she insults him and is defiantly a mistress shows that she feels entitled to it and feels like she's not doing anything wrong. Maybe there was a twinge of guilt initially, which is why she has to keep reminding herself of the words, "You can't live forever," as she goes off on her first rendezvous with Tom. But that quickly fades, and by the time we meet her, she's brazenly and unashamedly flaunting her infidelity right under her husband's nose, and even under Daisy's nose, calling her house to speak to Tom. Can you imagine if your partner's mistress called the house that you and your partner shared to talk to him? Even for today's standards, that would be considered crass. She also seems to lack the charm that can make people endearing. Brazen, direct, and unvarnished personalities can often have a certain kind of charisma, often bringing a breath of fresh air in amongst the stuffy and performative. But Myrtle doesn't even have that going for her. If Daisy's voice sounds like money, Myrtle's sounds like greed. Ostensibly, especially in appearance, she's also the exact opposite of Daisy Buchanan, who symbolizes class, delicacy, traditional femininity, and breeding. The one thing Myrtle does have, and what draws Tom to her, is her overt sexuality. The thing is, though, both women cheat on their husbands, and yet it's easier to see Myrtle as the brazen hussy, and Daisy still as a victim who is driven to infidelity due to her very bad husband. You can't really see Daisy as a sexual being, but you do get the impression that Myrtle would do all the things that Tom would never dare ask Daisy to do under the bed sheets. Tom is not married to Daisy because he loves her. He's with her because she's of his world. She is the woman that he is expected to marry. Myrtle, however, is his brief vacation when he wants to slum it for a bit before he goes back to his money, snobbery, and all the social restrictions that come with that, even for a man like him. Myrtle, of course, has no idea that this is how he sees her. She lives in a delusion where there is a possibility that he might marry her. Mind you, Myrtle doesn't love Tom either. She loves what he offers her: status, money, again, and essentially an escape from her dreary, struggling drudgery of a life with a husband that she despises. Of course, Myrtle and Tom must be sexually compatible with each other, explaining their ongoing relationship, but their entire relationship is built on sex and manipulation. What interests me most about Myrtle, however, is her relationship with her husband George. I'm just going to go ahead and assume that Myrtle and George got married very young, compared to the age that people get married today. Most people did get married very early back in that time, barely out of adolescence or maybe even at late adolescence. Common in adolescence is a completely idealistic view of a marriage. It's easy to imagine all the delusional hopes that Myrtle must have had on her wedding day, and I'm sure George did nothing to bring her down to reality because he did love her, so he wouldn't have done or said anything that might make him lose her. He didn't even tell her that he borrowed his wedding suit. Also, at a young age, before George became the worn-out, exhausted man we meet in the novel, he might have been a rather charming guy. Life just eroded him into ash. To me, it's clear to see Myrtle had had a tough childhood, and maybe just like she does with Tom, she initially saw George as an escape to get out of her situation. Women had very limited opportunities to change their lives independently in that era, and though a few women did get an education to move into the workforce to make their own money, marrying well for social and financial security was one of the most accepted and expected ways for women to change their situation. So if Myrtle came from a broken, difficult family life, desperate to get out, but also didn't have any real talent, intelligence, drive or opportunity to do it herself, then it's easy to see her falling for the first guy who promised her the world, and then being bitterly disappointed when she realizes this guy, George, can't make all her dreams come true. This explains her absolute contempt for him. She blames him for deceiving her. I do feel curious about all the things Tom would have said to Myrtle behind closed doors out of earshot of everyone else. Clearly Myrtle thinks she has a chance of marrying Tom, and the only reason they are not married is due to Daisy being Catholic, which is of course a lie. In truth, Tom had no intention of leaving Daisy and just wants to keep Myrtle under his control until he tires of her. And to Myrtle, the stark contrast between her poor, struggling husband and Tom, a man who can buy her anything she wants, hire fancy hotel rooms, and walks around in shiny patent shoes, is the dazzling dream of the life she desperately craves. So even when he hits her and breaks her nose, she can't give him up. That scene, by the way, is utterly brutal and tells you all you need to know about Tom. That sudden, abrupt escalation into violence the moment Myrtle defies his wishes and says Daisy's name. You can almost hear Tom's words in that hit. Go back into your lane, Harpy, and do as you're told. Have you forgotten who you are? Chills. There were so many different ways Tom could have responded to Myrtle. He could have walked out. He could have yelled back. He could have gently covered her mouth as a gesture. He could have threatened to stop buying her things. But he chose the violent way, the kind of man you have to be to go straight to breaking a woman's nose for something so minor, and in front of everyone at the party. What makes it worse is everyone else's response, because I don't remember ever reading about anyone being outraged at Tom's behavior. No one pins Tom down, hits him back, ostracizes him. Even Nick, who is often considered a good character, or at least benign, isn't outraged by the behavior and continues his relationship with Tom until Gatsby dies. It's so awful. It is no wonder Myrtle was also made to believe that what Tom did to her was acceptable. She is a tragic figure, of course. The way she dies is so pitiable, wanting so desperately to reach something through Tom that was ultimately completely out of her reach. Wealth, status, luxury, respect. She dies in the attempt to reach it, literally crushed under the very wealth she so desperately craved. Her only bargaining chip, her sexuality, useless. Fitzgerald's description of her left breast at her death scene was intentional to illustrate this idea. Though unlikable, she is a character of significance, and unlike the imagery we as the modern audience are usually fed about the jazz age, of glittery parties, flashing lights and freedom, those things were only available to you only if you were rich. If you weren't, you got crushed under the weight of people like the Buchanans, then discarded and forgotten along with all the others who live in the Valley of Ashes. That was a morose way to end the video, but I do hope you still enjoyed listening to this analysis. Until next time, bye!